There are 6 website building hacks that I wish I knew as a beginner. And if you are building websites with AI right now, then this video is going to save you a lot of wasted time and credits. Because here's what most tutorials show you. You type a prompt, you click generate, and a beautiful website appears. It's clean, it's fast, it's effortless. But what they don't show you is what happens after. The broken layouts, the 40 revisions, the credit balance that somehow hits 0 before the site even looks close to finished. And most people assume that the fix is finding a better AI model, a smarter tool, a newer platform. But that's not actually the problem. The difference between a website that takes 20 credits and one that takes 100 is almost never the AI. It's a handful of small habits that nobody teaches beginners. Habits that are genuinely simple once you actually know them, but almost impossible to figure out on your own. So in this video, you're going to learn 6 of them and how to plan properly before you build, how to use reference sites the right way, how to cut down revisions, improve your SEO from the start, and build websites that feel intentional from the very first generation, not the 15th. And these aren't advanced techniques at all. You don't need to know how to code. You just need to know what most beginners don't. Now, if you want to master AI tools and you want to learn how to build profitable SaaS apps, websites, AI agents, and mobile apps with AI, of course, I've created a complete masterclass that shows you exactly how to do it all step by step. Now, this masterclass normally costs $499 to join, but since you are watching the video, thank you. You can join completely free. Just check out that link in the description below to get free access to my masterclass, and you too can start building your own AI-powered business today. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. A lot of beginners think that the build starts when they hit generate. In reality though, the build starts the moment they write the first prompt. And that single message ends up influencing far more than people realize, and fixing mistakes afterward is usually a lot more expensive than getting the foundation right from the very beginning. So the first prompt is the most important decisions that you make in any website build, because Base 44 uses it to determine the entire structure of the project. It decides the page layout, the navigation, the design direction, the component structure, data schema, and everything else that follows. So every future change builds on top of that foundation. So when the prompt is vague, well, then the AI has to fill in the blanks for you. It makes assumptions about the pages, the styling, the content, and even the way that the site should be organized. And those assumptions, well, usually aren't terrible, but they're often quite generic. You end up with a kind of website that you've seen 100 times before. And those are generic Tailwind layouts, placeholder copy, lorem ipsum text, stock color palettes, and sections that nobody specifically asked for. So prompts like, make me a good looking website, or build me a habit tracker, or I need a website for my bakery. Those might seem harmless, but they hand every major decision over to the AI. And the frustrating part is that fixing those decisions later on can cost anywhere from 10 to 25 credits in revisions, regenerations, and fixes. Writing a better first prompt costs absolutely nothing extra. It's the same prompt box, the same credit charge, and the same generation process, but the quality of the output can be completely different. And Base 44 actually provides a simple starting formula. Create a function website, use a layout structure, apply a visual style aesthetic. And that's a good foundation already, but it's really just a starting point. A strong prompt should explain what the website does, who it's for, and what it makes useful. It should identify the target audience clearly enough that the AI knows how to write for them. It should list every page that you want up front rather than letting the AI invent them later on. So if you already know that you want a homepage, for example, a services page, a contact page, a pricing page, or anything else, declare them from the very beginning. Base 44 also supports different layout styles, so you can guide it toward a bento grid layout for feature-heavy websites, scrolly telling for story-driven experiences, or a split-screen layout for product-focused sites. The design direction also matters. Base 44 has strong associations with styles like, say, glassmorphism, aurora gradients, dark academia, and neo-brutalism. So naming one of those styles immediately gives the AI a clearer target. Adding your preferred hex codes even gives even more control over the final result. Typography and tone are worth specifying as well. So if you want the copy to feel premium, playful, corporate, minimalist, or highly technical, then say so. The more context that you provide, the less the AI has to guess. So real content is even more valuable than placeholders. And one of the best lines that I've seen on this topic is that design loves constraints, and real content creates the right ones. So real headlines, real service descriptions, and real real calls to action gives the AI actual material to design around instead of forcing it to invent everything from scratch. It's also important to tell the AI what not to do. A simple line explaining which sections, features, or styles should be excluded can save a surprising amount of cleanup later on. Explicit exclusions prevent the AI from adding things that you'll only end up removing anyway. And one simple framework that I like is who, what, and why. Who is the website for? What does it help them to do? And why should they choose it over something else? If your prompt answers those 3 questions, then you're already giving the AI far more direction than most builders ever do. The easiest way to put all of this together is outside of Base 44. Open up a Notes app and start dumping your ideas onto the page. Write down the purpose of the site, the audience, the page list, the layout choice, the visual style, and the hex codes, and the actual headlines that you want on each page, and then add one final line explaining what the AI should not include. So for a simple website, 4 to 8 well-written sentences is usually enough, and for a larger multi-page website or something that includes a data model, 400 to 700 words is often a better target. And once everything is ready, we'll just paste it into Base 44 as one complete first message. If organizing all of that feels difficult, you can always use Claude or another AI chatbot to help structure and simplify your ideas first before bringing them into Base 44. So let's see the difference in practice, right? We're going to select a Claude model here, so we're using the same underlying intelligence that powers Claude code. And for this example, we're going to build a, say, personal trainer website using a detailed first prompt. The site will include a homepage, a services page, and a contact page. The visual style will be neo-brutalism using a black and white foundation and an electric yellow accent color. The target audience is urban gym goers between, say, 25 and 40 years old. The prompt also includes the trainer's name, a tagline, descriptions for 3 services, and a call to action directly inside of the prompt. And once the site finishes generating, the result immediately feels more intentional. As you can see, the electric yellow is definitely bold, but that is part of the point. The website reflects the choices that we made instead of whatever defaults the AI would have picked on its own. The content also feels more personalized. The structure matches what we've asked for, and there is far less cleanup afterward. It also doesn't look like the typical AI-generated website that pretty much everyone else is producing nowadays. So now let's compare that to a much simpler prompt like, build me a personal trainer website that looks modern and professional. That's it. To be fair, the output is still pretty good here. We're using Claude Opus 4.8, so it's difficult to get a completely bad result. If you're not entirely sure what you want yet, then this approach can still get you something usable. The differences just start showing up when you look a little bit closer. Maybe it generates a before and after transformation slider that you never planned on including. Or maybe it builds everything as one long scrolling page when you really actually wanted separate pages. And maybe the color palette is brighter than you preferred, or the sections don't really match the structure you had in mind. Now, none of those things are major problems, but every one of them does require another prompt to fix. So every additional prompt then means more credits, and every change then creates another opportunity for something else to break along the way. Put the 2 versions side by side now, and the value of a strong first prompt, because, well, much easier to see. Both websites are functional, yes. Both websites look good, yes. The difference is that one follows your vision from the start, while the other requires additional work to get there. And that's why the first prompt has such a big impact on the entire project. A few extra minutes spent defining what you want can really save you a surprising amount of time, credits, and frustration really later on. The goal isn't writing the longest prompt possible. The goal is making the important decisions before the AI makes them for you, so you don't have to reorganize the foundation after the website is built out. One of the biggest reasons AI-generated websites sometimes feel generic has nothing to do with the AI being bad. The problem is that the AI has to make thousands and thousands of tiny design decisions on its own. It has to decide the spacing, the font pairings, the visual hierarchy, section order, button styles, animations, and dozens of other details that most people really just never consciously think about. So a reference site removes a huge huge amount of that guesswork. Rather than asking the AI to invent an entire design language from scratch, you're giving it a visual target to work towards. The result is usually much closer to what you actually had in mind because the AI is no longer improvising every single decision. It is, however, very important to set expectations though. Reference-based builds are not pixel-perfect clones. In most cases, you're looking at, say, roughly 70 to 80% accuracy. And that's completely fine here because the goal is not cloning. The goal is skipping the design exploration phase and starting from a much stronger foundation. There is one important disclaimer before we go any further here. Now, Base 44's documentation makes it clear that the legal responsibility belongs to the builder, so you should only reference websites you own or have the rights to use. References should be used for inspiration and layout direction and design patterns, not for copying somebody else's content, their branding, or intellectual property. So finding a good reference is actually more important than many people realize, because Base 44 generates websites using React, Tailwind, and other UI components. And because of that, these websites built around similar component systems tend to produce the best results. Sites like Linear, Vercel, Stripe, Notion, and Apple are commonly used as references because the AI already has strong associations with those design patterns. But not every website works equally well though. Some sites look great to humans but are difficult for AI builders to interpret. Heavily JavaScript rendered applications, paywall dashboards, proprietary font systems, and websites built around advanced WebGL or 3.js effects often create problems. In some cases, the URL scraper sees little more than an empty shell. And once you've chosen a reference, Base 44 then gives you several different ways to use it. The first option is start from URL, which was introduced back in March 2026 and is available on starter plans and above. Click the plus icon inside the prompt box, select Start from URL, then choose whether you want Content and Design or Design only. Content and Design attempts a full recreation, while Design only transfers the visual style without copying the content. The second option is usually simply uploading a screenshot or an image. You can drag and drop screenshots directly into the chat, and then Base 44 can also work with videos, PDFs, docx files, CSV files, and JSON files. The third option is Figma import. So paste a frame link with viewing access enabled, and Base 44 can generate directly from the design. Auto layout is highly recommended here because it does help produce cleaner, responsive layouts. Now, the fourth option is the simplest. For well-known brands, you can just often get surprisingly good results with instructions like make it look like Stripe or make it look like Linear. And what tends to work even better than straight cloning is something called the synthesis approach. So rather than using one reference, you use two. One reference provides the structure, and then the second provides the interaction style. And then you adapt both of them to your own business. So for example, you might tell Base 44, build a pricing page with the structural clarity of Stripe's pricing page and the interaction feel of Linear's hover states, adapted for a luxury service business. So now you're borrowing proven ideas without trying to recreate either website directly. The one thing I always recommend is following the reference instruction with a brand override, because without it, the AI sometimes pulls colors, imagery styles, or copywriting tones from the reference itself. A brand override tells Base 44 exactly what should belong to your business and what should remain behind. So let's look at a real example here. If you've already seen the Figma import feature earlier in the video, then please feel free to fast forward through the setup because the results here are pretty straightforward. Once the file is imported correctly, Base 44 follows the design remarkably closely. In many cases, it feels almost one-to-one with the original layout. For a more interesting example, let's go ahead and build something using the synthesis approach. We'll create a website for an upscale French bistro called Maison Dorée. First, we'll upload a screenshot of an existing restaurant website to establish the structure and the section order. Then we'll combine it with a second reference for interaction design. So here's the exact prompt. Build a homepage that has the structural clarity of Gramercy Tavern's website, the hover interaction feel of Canlis, adapted for an upscale French bistro called Maison Dorée in downtown Chicago. Brand colors, and then those will be added here on your screen, along with a tone, refined, unhurried, and quietly confident. The kind of copy that does not need to oversell. Do not use any visual elements directly from either reference site. And once the generation finishes from that prompt, you can can immediately see what happens here. The website captures the menu structure and the overall flow that makes Gramercy Tavern such a strong reference. The interactions feel closer to Canlis, and at the same time, the colors, the branding, and the tone belong to Maison Doré rather than either source website. Some areas may still contain placeholders because Base 44 isn't generating custom photography for every section, but the overall result does feel far more intentional than a generic restaurant template. And that's really the power of reference sites. You're not asking the AI to guess what good design looks like. Rather, you're showing it exactly what good looks like and then adapting it to your own business, audience, and your brand. But here's the thing, as you've seen, Base 44 is incredibly powerful, but most people still don't even know how to use it properly. They end up building basic apps that don't make money or websites that can't even convert. And that's exactly why I created my own complete Base 44 Masterclass. Because inside of my course, I'm going to show you step by step how to build profitable SaaS businesses, high converting websites, and mobile apps, of course, all using AI with zero coding required. You're going to learn how to build AI agents that solve real problems and generate recurring revenue, the exact prompts and the strategies that I use myself to create professional websites in minutes, also how to clone successful apps and then add your own profitable twist, along with my proven system for turning Base 44 projects into actual income streams. Now, this isn't just theory. I'm going to walk you through real builds. I'm going to show you my exact process. And of course, I'm going to give you the templates and the frameworks that have already helped my students launch their own successful AI-powered businesses. And again, this masterclass normally costs $499 to join, but only for the people that are watching this video. Thank you. You can join completely free. So if you are serious, and I hope you are, about building something profitable with AI in 2026, you gotta click that link in the description to join my Base 44 Masterclass. Because I'm telling you, your future self will thank you for taking action today, right now, instead of just watching another tutorial. All right, let's get back to the build. A website is rarely finished after the first generation. There's usually a headline to rewrite, a color to adjust, a section to clean up, or maybe some spacing that doesn't look quite right. And the mistake a lot of beginners make is opening the chat for every one of those small changes. And then they do it again, and again, and then a few hours later, they spent a surprising number of credits making changes that probably could have been done in just a few clicks. And the reason this happens is because every chat prompt triggers the full AI pipeline. And Base 44 has to read the project files, understand your request, plan the changes, generate code, and then verify the result. Even something as simple as make the button blue still goes through that entire process, and it costs credits. The visual editor works differently though. According to Base 44's documentation, manual visual edits such as, say, dragging elements, changing layouts, adjusting styles, or editing text directly inside the editor, those don't use credits. No AI generation is happening behind the scenes. The changes are applied directly to the underlying code, which means no token usage, no inference, and no risk of the AI accidentally changing something unrelated elsewhere in the project. So the same idea applies to code edits inside the code tab on starter plans and above. Since you are making the change directly yourself, there are no credits being consumed. A lot more can also be edited visually than people even realize. You can update text and copy, you can change colors on individual elements, you can adjust font sizes and weights and tweak padding and spacing. You can even hide sections and delete components, you can swap images, and even change site-wide brand colors and fonts through the theme panel. And that's why I like using a very simple rule: use the chat for functionality, and then use the visual editor for design. If you're adding new pages, modifying routes, changing the data schema, building backend logic, connecting integrations, creating new components, or maybe performing large refactors, then use the chat because those tasks actually require AI assistance. But if you're just changing colors or updating text or adjusting spacing, replacing images, or making visual refinements, then use the editor. Never prompt for something a click can accomplish. There's also a useful middle ground here called edit element mode. And edit element still uses credits, but it limits the AI's attention to a single selected component rather than scanning the entire project. And that is helpful when a change is too complex for the visual editor, but doesn't justify regenerating the whole site. And the savings do add up much faster than most people expect. So let's say that you're on the starter plan with 100 message credits. 10 small prompts for color changes, spacing adjustments, or copy edits can easily consume around 5% of your monthly allowance. So across an entire website build, the difference between somebody who relies on the visual editor and somebody who who just uses chat for everything can be 20 to 40 credits. And that's often the difference between finishing a project comfortably and running out of credits halfway through. You can even see this frustration in Base 44's own feedback board. One user wrote that they had used over 30 credits asking for the same task repeatedly and still couldn't get the result that they wanted. The visual editor just removes that category of problem almost entirely, because now you're making the change directly rather than hoping the AI interprets your request correctly. So let's go back to the Maison de Ray website we built in the previous hack. The site is already live, and at this point, most builders would probably start opening up the chat again. But let's not do that. Instead, we'll switch entirely to the visual editor and make a series of improvements. We'll update the tagline text here, replace the placeholder hero image description. Let's adjust the navigation bar color and tweak the spacing inside of the menu section, and also update the reservation headline. Notice that none of those changes require a prompt. We're not typing instructions into the chat. We're not waiting for code generation. We're simply making the edits directly. And while doing this, keep an eye on that credit counter. The site becomes more polished with every adjustment, but as you can see, the credit count never moves. The website ended up looking better, but we didn't have to spend a single additional credit getting there. And that's exactly why the visual editor is such a powerful habit to build. Save the chat for changes that actually require new functionality and handle design polish directly inside the editor. The result is a faster workflow, fewer wasted credits, and a much smoother path from first draft to finished website. Now, nothing is more frustrating than watching an AI confidently build the wrong thing. The pages look fine, the design works, the features, well, they technically function, and then you realize the navigation isn't structured the way that you actually want it. The data model doesn't support a feature you need later, or the user flow doesn't actually match how customers are supposed to use the site. And at this point, you're no longer improving the project, you're rebuilding parts of it. And that's exactly the problem Discuss mode is designed to solve. Base 44 actually has 3 different chat modes: default, edit, and discuss. Now, most people spend nearly all of their time in default mode because, well, that is where the building happens. Now, discuss mode works differently here. It lets you plan with the AI without making any changes to the project itself. It's also significantly cheaper. Discuss mode costs around 0.3 credits per message, while a standard build prompt typically costs 1 credit or more. Base 44 uses a fixed lower cost model in discuss mode to keep that cost consistent. And there is another tool that works alongside it called plan mode. And plan mode appears on the very first prompt of a new project. Turning it on tells Base 44 to create a detailed blueprint before generating anything. And the 2 features are designed to work together. Plan mode helps map out the entire project before the first build, while discuss mode helps you think through architectural decisions throughout the rest of the project. So the economics are surprisingly good. A 5 to 10 credit planning session can easily prevent a 20 to 50 credit rebuild later on in a more complex project. Similar planning systems on other AI builders have reported token reductions of up to 90% simply because fewer mistakes are being corrected afterwards. And the reason comes down to how AI builders work. They naturally optimize for your latest instruction, not necessarily your actual long-term goal. Discuss mode forces you to define the goal first before the AI starts generating code. So let's see how that works out. We'll switch the chat into discuss mode before typing anything. And for the best results here, we'll select Claude Opus as our model. So now, rather than asking Base 44 to immediately build something out, we're going to describe the website in plain English and then ask for a complete project plan. Specifically, we want the plan to cover the sitemap, component breakdowns for every page, the data schema, the user flows, integrations, and the design system tokens. So in other words, we want Base 44 to think through the entire project before writing a single line of code. And once Base 44 generates the plan, then don't rush right away into building. This review step is where the real value comes from. So let's start with the sitemap. Every page should be listed clearly and named consistently. And this matters more than it sounds because, well, page names become part of Base 44's URL structure. Renaming pages later on can create broken internal links and unnecessary cleanup work. Next, check the data schema. Every table field and relationship should be explicitly defined. If something important is missing here, it's much easier to fix it now than after the site has already been built. Then review the user flows. Let's make sure the plan explains how users sign up, how they complete the primary action, and move through the key pages of the site. A good user flow catches a lot of structural issues before they become expensive rebuilds. And then after that, let's look at integrations. Any API, payment processor, CRM, email platform, or external service should already be listed in the plan. One area people often overlook is assumptions. AI models make assumptions constantly. A planning document makes those assumptions visible, which then gives you a chance to correct them before they become part of the project. Authentication and access control should also be included from the very beginning whenever they are actually needed. So adding auth later has a habit of creating regressions because you're modifying something that affects the entire application. So the design system is another thing worth checking out, and I'm talking about colors, typography, spacing tokens, and reusable design patterns, and those should already be defined before the build starts, so that consistency pays off later when the project does grow. And once everything looks good to you, switch back into default mode and then use the approved plan as the foundation for the build. And the reason this works so well comes down to clarity. One quote I came across from low-code agency's Jesus Vargas summed it up quite perfectly. He said that a well-structured 5-sentence prompt outperforms a vague paragraph every time. He also pointed out that regenerating a misunderstood feature can also cost 10 to 25 credits, while writing a clearer prompt costs exactly the same as a vague one. So that idea shows up repeatedly in real-world usage. Now, one reviewer on experiment.com described discuss mode as the standout feature of Base 44 because it allowed them to plan logic and architecture without spending credits on generation. They even called it the MVP feature of the platform. The biggest benefit isn't that discuss mode saves credits, although it certainly does. The bigger benefit is that it gives you a chance to validate the structure of the project before committing to it. A few minutes spent planning can really prevent dozens of credits worth of rebuilding later on, and that is one of the highest return habits that you can develop when building with AI. Publishing a website feels like the finish line, yes, but for search engines, it's really the starting line. A lot of AI-generated websites, they look great when you open them up in a browser. The problem, however, is that Google doesn't always see the same thing that your visitors do. Base 44, Lovable, Bolt, VO, Replit, and many other AI builders create websites using React and Vite. And by default, these are client-side rendered applications. So on the first crawl, search engines can end up seeing little more than an HTML shell while the content loads through JavaScript. This isn't just a theoretical problem. Google's own John Mueller publicly pointed out a vibe-coded website on Reddit that had inaccessible content, missing meta tags, and no structured data. And then another user named David Klober documented his experience after launching a site built with Lovable. When he checked Google Search Console, the crawled version contained little more than a loading screen with no meaningful content, no headings, and almost nothing for Google to index. And that is the default state of many AI-built websites that haven't had SEO applied properly. The good news, though, is that fixing the major issues can be surprisingly simple. One SEO prompt can automatically add a huge amount of missing metadata across the entire site. So that includes unique page titles for every page, properly written meta descriptions, open graph tags for social sharing, descriptive alt text on all of your images, a correct heading hierarchy, JSON LD structured data, sitemap updates, and a semantic HTML pass across the site. And those improvements may not be visible to you or the visitors, but search engines and social platforms rely on them heavily. Open graph tags deserve special attention here because they're responsible for the preview cards that people see when sharing links on Facebook and LinkedIn, X, and other platforms. And most social media scrapers don't execute JavaScript, which means open graph tags generated dynamically after the page loads can be completely invisible to them. And the result is often a broken preview card, a missing image, or no preview at all. The SEO prompt fixes all of that. Meta titles are another area that catches people off guard. Google rewrites roughly, say, 76% of page titles, which means putting the primary keyword at the beginning is usually more important than obsessing over the exact character count. If Google decides to keep your title, the most important keyword then is already front and center. Image accessibility also matters. Every image should have descriptive alt text whenever possible. Heading structures should be logical as well, with one H1 per page, followed by properly nested H2 and H3 headings. Structured data helps search engines understand what type of content they're looking at, whether that's, say, an organization, a local business, a product page, or an FAQ section. Now, to be fair, Base 44 has improved significantly in this area. On custom domains, it already generates HTML snapshots for crawlers, and it automatically creates sitemap.xml and robot.txt files. What it doesn't automatically handle are things like detailed per-page meta descriptions, JSON LD schema, dynamic open graph tags for slug-based pages, and more advanced sitemap customization. And that's where this SEO prompt fills the gaps. The best part is that Base 44 already provides the prompt. The only thing that you need to be careful about is the final instruction, because without it, the AI sometimes decides to redesign parts of the site while doing SEO work. So here's the exact prompt. Improve my app's SEO without changing any UI, layout, or visible content. Specifically, update the page titles and meta descriptions for each page, add open graph tags for social sharing, ensure all images have descriptive alt text, add JSON LD structured data where relevant, check that heading tags follow a logical hierarchy, and make sure the sitemap is up to date. Do not change any colors, fonts, spacing, or visible components. Verify sitemap.xml includes all pages. Do not change any colors, fonts, spacing, or visible components. So that final line is critical here because it locks the design while the AI works on the SEO. So let's go ahead and see it in action. We'll use the Apex protocol website that's already open. First, publish the site, and we'll run a few basic checks. Lighthouse works fine, and there are plenty of third-party tools available as well. One thing that's becoming clear with the June 2026 updates is that Base 44's SEO foundation is much stronger than it used to be. Next, head back into Base 44 and open up the dashboard. Under Marketing, you'll find SEO and GEO. Run a scan, and you'll get a list of recommendations and some issues. Before clicking the automated fix buttons, I do recommend running the SEO prompt first. It covers many of the foundational improvements that scanners don't always prioritize in their scoring systems. Now, some of those changes may not dramatically move the score, but they are still valuable from an SEO perspective. So while we're here in this section, let's go ahead and notice additional tools such as AI Assistant Discover, sitemap generation, robots.txt generation, and per-page breadcrumbs. And after running the prompt, we can go ahead and start addressing any remaining recommendations one by one using the built-in tools. This is also a good time to add pages like About and Contact if they don't already exist. And for additional customization, we can open the meta tag section or app overview to edit the app name and description. More advanced settings are already available under settings and then app settings. And the biggest advantage of this hack is how little work it actually requires. A lot of builders spend hours thinking about SEO after launch, but here a single prompt handles many of the biggest gaps immediately. It won't guarantee rankings, but it does give search engines, social platforms, and AI discovery systems a much better understanding of what your website actually contains. Now, a lot of people build websites one page at a time. They start with the home page, add an about page later, then a services page, and keep expanding from there. And it feels like a safe approach, but it often creates a different problem. Every new page introduces small inconsistencies that slowly spread across the whole project. A button looks different from the original version. A card component loses some styling. The navigation even shifts, spacing changes. And by the third or fourth page, you're spending more time fixing inconsistencies than adding actual content. Developers sometimes refer to this as component debt. So there is an important nuance here. Some AI building guides warn against generating an entire website in one prompt. And that is true if you're expecting one prompt to build a perfect finished product, well, forever. And that's not what we're doing here. The goal is to establish the entire website structure up front. And once that foundation exists, you can continue refining individual sections and pages. One large architectural prompt creates consistency. Iteration happens afterward. And this matters even more in Base 44 simply because of how the platform handles page routing. Base 44 uses page names and query parameters as part of its URL structure. So a page called about-us with uppercase letters and a page called about-us with lowercase letters are treated differently. When page names are declared from the beginning, everything stays consistent. When pages are added later, well, then naming mismatches can create broken links and unnecessary cleanup after. Another issue is design drift. Developer Jessica Barnett described vibe coding as something that starts off fine and then becomes frustrating surprisingly quickly. UX pin testers reported inconsistent fonts and button colors and spacing after only a few sessions when they didn't start with a strong structural prompt. And the same thing happens behind the scenes with data models. So if you don't define the structure up front, the AI creates one for you. And it might work perfectly for the first version, but later features may require something completely different. And then at that point, you're now rebuilding systems that could have been planned correctly from the very beginning. A founding prompt solves many of these problems because it forces the AI to view the project as one complete system. Base 44 can route work through Claude Sonnet, Claude Opus, Gemini, and GPT-5, depending on the task. Now for website projects, I do still recommend selecting Claude manually because it's particularly strong at handling larger instructions and code-related tasks. When the entire site structure exists in one prompt, the AI processes everything as a single design challenge. But when pages are added one by one, then every new prompt starts from a slightly different slice of project context, and then inconsistencies begin to accumulate. So what should actually go into a founding prompt? Well, start with the product identity. Define the name, the core outcome, the target audience, and the business goals. And then define the voice and the tone, describe the brand personality in plain language, and specify words that you want the copy to use and to avoid. After that, establish the design system. Include the primary color, the accent color, the background color, font pairings, spacing scale, border radius, and icon library. Actual hex codes also work much better than general color descriptions. Next up comes the sitemap. So every page should be listed up front because those names become URL slugs inside Base 44. Then define the sections for each page and include real headline copy wherever possible. Shared components should also be specified. Define the header, the footer, the navigation structure, the button styles, cards, and the forms. Then map out desktop navigation, mobile navigation behavior, and the footer links. If your project uses data, define every entity in field and relationship. Then identify the primary call to action and where it should appear throughout the website. Finally, include acceptance criteria, things like identical headers and footers across all pages, working navigation, and consistent typography give the AI a clear target to build towards. Now, for most business websites, a good founding prompt falls between 400 and 700 words. Projects that include integrations or more advanced data structures can easily reach 1,200 words. So if that sounds like a lot of work, and I know it does, there is an easier option. You can ask Claude to generate an artifact that turns all of these requirements into a questionnaire. So simply answer the questions, place the responses into a document, and then let Claude organize everything into a complete founding prompt. So let's see what that looks like in practice, and we'll use a business called Kaya Brew Co. And after completing the questionnaire, let's save the answers into a document and attach it to Claude. Now, the founding prompt structure shown here on your screen will be used to turn those answers into a complete website blueprint. And once Claude fills in the structure using your responses, copy the output into Base 44 and then select Claude Opus 4.8 before generating the site. And the build takes longer than a single page website because multiple pages are being created at once, but that's exactly the point here. We're building the entire structure together rather than assembling it piece by piece. And the result is a complete business website with a home page, an about page, a services page, a portfolio page, and a contact page. The prompt includes real copy, a full design system with hex codes, shared components, navigation rules, and acceptance criteria. And once the site finishes generating, scroll through all 5 of the pages. The headers match, the footers match, navigation does stay consistent, typography remains consistent, buttons follow the same design language throughout all of the project, and the website really does feel like one cohesive product rather than a collection of pages all built at different times. And that's really the purpose of this hack. The founding prompt isn't about generating more context. It's about creating a strong foundation that keeps the project consistent as it grows. So when the architecture is defined upfront, then every future change has something stable to build on, which usually means fewer fixes, fewer credits, and a much cleaner final result. All right, so the next website that you build with Base 44 doesn't need to be bigger. It just needs a better foundation, a stronger prompt, a clearer plan, and a few smarter habits can save you a surprising amount of time and credits. Thank you for watching and investing your time with me today. I'll see you at the next build.